The winter wind cut through the ceremonial gardens like a blade, carrying the scent of pine and frost as I kept my head bowed, blonde hair falling forward to shield my face. My grandmother once told me that on the night of the choosing, the moon goddess would touch her chosen ones with silver light. But tonight, the clouds hung heavy, and no moonbeams penetrated the darkness. Perhaps the goddess herself couldn't bear to witness my humiliation. I stood at the edge of the gathering, my ceremonial white dress billowing slightly in the wind. Around me, other Omegas displayed themselves proudly. Unblemished skin glowing, eyes bright with anticipation. Their laughter rang through the air like wind chimes. Beautiful and delicate, mine remained locked in my throat, a prisoner of my fear. "Stand straight, Alara," my sister Mira whispered, adjusting my collar. "You can't hide forever." But I could try. My fingers instinctively rose to trace the scar that ran from my left temple down to my jaw. A parting gift from the attack that had killed our parents when I was 12. 10 years had passed, but the raised tissue remained, a permanent reminder that I was damaged goods in a world that valued perfection. In my pocket, I clutched the small wooden wolf figurine my father had carved for me. "Courage isn't the absence of fear, little one," he'd told me, pressing it into my palm. "It's moving forward despite it." The smooth wood had been worn by years of anxious rubbing, my thumb tracing its contours whenever my heart raced as it did now. The ceremonial drums began to beat, each thud matching the rhythm of my heart. The crowd parted, and I caught my first glimpse of the delegation from the northern pack. Warriors moved in practiced formation, their faces impassive as stone, their presence commanding respect without a single word spoken. Behind them came the council members in their ceremonial furs, eyes scanning the crowd of Omegas with calculated interest. And then the air itself seemed to change. He didn't stride in like I expected a king would. He moved with the quiet confidence of a predator who never needed to announce his presence. Alpha King, Dominic Ravencroft. Even from this distance, I could feel the power radiating from him. An unspoken authority that made every wolf in the vicinity lower their gaze instinctively. All except me, because I was already staring at the ground, counting the patterns in the stone beneath my feet, desperately wishing I could dissolve into the earth. "Eligible Omegas, step forward," called Elder Thalia, her voice carrying across the silent crowd. The girls around me moved as one, graceful steps taking them to the center of the ceremonial circle. My feet remained frozen. "Alara," Mira hissed, nudging me. "Go." I shuffled forward, keeping to the back of the group, my hair a curtain between me and the world. The ceremonial circle was ancient, stones worn smooth by generations of feet. Legend said these ceremonies had been performed since before humans walked the earth. Tonight, it felt like a sacrificial altar. "The choosing ceremony honors our oldest traditions," Elder Thalia announced. "Tonight, worthy Omegas will be recognized by our northern allies, strengthening the bonds between our packs." Recognized. The polite word for selected, claimed, taken. No one said it aloud, but everyone knew. This ceremony was political, an exchange of Omegas to maintain peace between territories that had once been at war. We were living treaties. The selection process began with the council members circling us, examining the offerings. Some girls straightened their shoulders, tilting their chins up proudly. I hunched further into myself, willing invisibility. A cold drop of rain fell on my cheek, sliding down like a tear. Then another. The clouds had finally broken, but the ceremony continued without pause. Rain in the middle of the choosing was considered a blessing from the moon goddess. Her tears of joy, the elders said. I wondered if they were tears of sorrow instead. As the rain increased, my dress began to cling to my skin. My hair, now damp, stuck to my face, including the scar I so desperately tried to hide. Panic rose in my throat. I couldn't use my hands to fix it without drawing attention. My breathing quickened, each inhale shallower than the last. "You there. The one hiding." The deep voice cut through the ceremonial chants, silencing everything. My heart stopped. Though I didn't raise my head, I knew instinctively who had spoken. The Alpha King himself. "Look at me." It wasn't said loudly, but the command in his voice made it impossible to disobey. Slowly, Trembling, I raised my face, though my hair still partially shielded my scar. Rain continued to fall between us, creating a shimmering curtain. King Dominic stood before me, tall and imposing. His dark hair was dampened by rain, making it appear almost black in the torchlight. His features were sharp, aristocratic, with eyes so pale they seemed to glow. But it was the intensity of his gaze that struck me most. He looked at me as if he could see through skin and bone to the very core of me. "Your name," he said. Not a question, a demand. "Ilara Bennett, Your Majesty." My voice emerged as a whisper, nearly lost beneath the sound of falling rain. He stepped closer, and I fought the urge to step back. Everyone was watching now. I could feel their stares burning into me, their whispers rising like the hiss of snakes. "Why do you hide your face, Ilara Bennett?" A drop of rain, or perhaps a tear, I couldn't tell the difference anymore, slid down my cheek. "Because it is not pleasing to look upon, Your Majesty." Something flashed in his eyes, anger, perhaps, though it wasn't directed at me. He reached forward, and I flinched instinctively. His hand paused in mid-air, and for a moment I thought I glimpsed something like hurt in his expression. Then his fingers gently brushed my hair away from my face, fully exposing my scar to him and everyone watching. I expected disgust, pity at best. Instead, his expression remained unchanged as he studied my face, his gaze lingering on the scar in a way that didn't feel judgmental. "Who told you such lies?" he asked, his voice low enough that only I could hear. Before I could answer, Elder Thalia approached, bowing deeply. "Your Majesty, there are many other suitable candidates. This one is damaged." The word cut deeper than any blade. I lowered my eyes again, shame burning through me. Damaged? The temperature of his voice dropped so dramatically that I could almost see frost forming on his words. "Choose your next words with extreme care, Elder." The older woman paled, taking a step back. "I simply meant—" "I know exactly what you meant," he interrupted. "And you are dismissed." The elder's mouth opened and closed, fish-like with shock, before she bowed again and retreated. King Dominic's attention returned to me. The rain was falling harder now, drumming against the stones. The ceremonial fires hissed and sputtered, fighting to stay lit. All around us, people were seeking shelter, the careful organization of the ceremony crumbling beneath the unexpected downpour. "Come," he said simply, extending his hand to me. I stared at it, uncomprehending. "Where?" A smile touched his lips, transforming his severe face into something almost gentle. Out of the rain would be a start. Whispers erupted around us. From the corner of my eye, I could see Mira's shocked expression, the disbelief on the faces of the other Omegas. My fingers tightened around my father's carving in my pocket. Courage isn't the absence of fear. I placed my trembling hand in his. His fingers closed around mine, warm despite the cold rain. He led me toward the great hall, his warriors immediately forming a protective formation around us. Behind us, I could hear Elder Thalia attempting to restore order to the ceremony, but her voice was drowned out by the storm and the chaos. As we entered the warm, torchlit hall, he released my hand but stayed close. Servants rushed forward with towels. He took one and, to my absolute shock, gently placed it around my shoulders himself. "Why?" The question escaped before I could stop it. His pale eyes studied me with that same unsettling intensity. "Why what, Ilara Bennett? Why choose me?" I clutched the towel tighter. I'm not what an Alpha King should want. And what exactly do you believe an Alpha King should want?" There was a dangerous edge to his question. I swallowed hard. "Someone beautiful, unblemished. Someone worthy of standing beside you." For a long moment he said nothing, just looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Then he leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that sent shivers down my spine. "Every tear you've shed, every moment you've hidden your face, I've been watching. And do you know what I saw?" He didn't wait for my answer. Strength. The kind that doesn't come from being unblemished, but from being broken and continuing anyway. His fingers lightly traced the air beside my scar, not quite touching. "Your scars tell me more about your worth than any unblemished face ever could." The hall doors burst open, and a group of dripping council members entered, their ceremonial furs sodden and heavy. King Dominic straightened, his expression shifting back to the impassive mask of authority. "We will speak more tonight," he said, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. After the feast, as he walked away to greet the council members, I stood frozen, towel clutched around me, water pooling at my feet. The wooden wolf in my pocket seemed to press against my fingers, reminding me of my father's words. "Courage isn't the absence of fear, little one. It's moving forward despite it." I just wasn't sure if I had enough courage for what might come next. The feast hall buzzed with tension and whispers. I sat at the high table, a position of honor I had neither expected nor prepared for. The chair beside me, reserved for the Alpha King, remained empty while he conducted diplomatic discussions in a corner with the council elders. Their serious expressions and occasional glances in my direction made my stomach tighten with anxiety. My sister Mira had been permitted to join me, though she sat several seats away. When our eyes met, she gave me a small, encouraging smile, but I could see the questions swimming behind her gaze. How had this happened? What did it mean? I had no answers for her. "Don't touch the silverware until the Alpha takes his first bite," whispered an attendant who materialized behind me, adjusting my chair. "Keep your eyes lowered when addressing council members, but maintain eye contact with the Alpha when he speaks to you. Never turn your back to him when leaving his presence." The rules washed over me in a flood. Too many to absorb. I nodded mechanically, fingers finding the wooden wolf in the pocket I'd insisted on keeping, even after being dressed in a dry gown of midnight blue that wasn't mine. The fabric was finer than anything I'd ever worn, soft against my skin, but I felt like an imposter in it. "Most importantly," the attendant continued, leaning closer, "don't embarrass him. The northern wolves are different. Their customs are ancient, their pride easily wounded." Before I could respond, a hush fell over the room. King Dominic entered, his presence commanding immediate attention. He'd changed into formal attire, dark clothing adorned with silver embroidery that caught the light as he moved. Every eye followed him as he made his way to the high table, to me. My heart thundered in my chest as he took the seat beside mine. Up close, I noticed details I'd missed before, a thin scar bisecting his right eyebrow, the slight asymmetry of his features that somehow made him more striking rather than less. He wasn't conventionally handsome in the way some alphas were, with their perfect symmetry and unblemished skin. There was something wild about him, untamed despite his regal bearing. "You look like you're planning an escape route," he said quietly, amusement warming his voice as he reached for his goblet. Heat flooded my cheeks. Is it that obvious? Only to me. His eyes met mine, and for a moment, the noise of the feast faded away. "Are you comfortable, Ilara?" The question surprised me. Alphas, especially those of his status, rarely concerned themselves with an Omega's comfort. The dress is lovely. That wasn't my question. I swallowed hard. Truth or platitude? The intensity of his gaze made lying seem impossible. "No," I admitted. "I'm not comfortable. I don't know why I'm here or what's expected of me." Instead of offense, something like satisfaction crossed his face. Honesty. Good. He took a sip from his goblet, then placed it down deliberately. "What do you know of Northern Pack traditions?" "Very little," I admitted. "Only stories." "What kind of stories?" I hesitated, not wanting to offend him. The stories we grew up with painted the northern wolves as brutal warriors, cold as the lands they ruled. Tales of their harsh justice and ancient blood rituals had frightened me as a child. "You're afraid to tell me?" It wasn't a question. "Are they so terrible, these stories?" "They say northern alphas choose their mates based on strength," I said carefully. "That weakness is not tolerated." He studied me, his expression unreadable. "And you believe yourself weak because of this?" His fingers hovered near my face, indicating my scar without touching it. "Isn't that what everyone sees? What everyone believes?" The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. "I don't care what everyone believes." The coldness in his tone made me shiver. "I care what you believe." Before I could answer, servers appeared with the first course, a rich soup that steamed in the cool air of the hall. King Dominic lifted his spoon, and only then did the rest of the gathering begin to eat. I followed suit, grateful for the momentary reprieve from his intense questioning. As we ate, I became aware of the stares directed our way. Some curious, some envious, some openly hostile. A particularly beautiful Omega from a prominent family looked at me with such venom that I nearly choked on my soup. "Ignore Sarah," the king said, noticing the direction of my gaze. "Her ambition exceeds her worth." "She's beautiful," I said before I could stop myself. "Beauty without substance is like a flower without scent, decorative but ultimately forgettable." He set down his spoon. "Tell me about your scar, Alara." The abrupt change of subject startled me. My hand instinctively rose to my face before I forced it back down to my lap. "You don't need to hide it," he said quietly. "Not from me." Something in his voice, a gentleness I hadn't expected, loosened the knot in my chest. "There was an attack when I was 12. Rogue wolves. They killed my parents." The words came haltingly, each one dredged up from the darkest corner of my memories. "My father fought them, gave me and Mira time to run. One caught me, dragged me back by my hair, his claws. My fingers traced the path of the scar without touching it. I don't remember much after that. Just blood and screaming. Our pack's warriors arrived too late for my parents, but they saved me and Mira." King Dominic's expression had darkened with each word, a storm gathering in his eyes. "These rogues, were they caught? Punished?" I nodded. "They were executed." "Good," he said, the single word heavy with finality. Then more softly, "You survived. You protected your sister. I failed. I wasn't strong enough to—" "You were a child," he interrupted, his voice firm but not unkind. "And yet you lived through something that would have broken many grown wolves. That is strength, Ilara." The second course arrived, roasted venison with autumn vegetables. The rich aroma filled the air, but my appetite had fled. King Dominic seemed to notice, placing only a small portion on my plate before serving himself. "You speak as if you understand," I said quietly, pushing a carrot around my plate. "I do." He rolled up his left sleeve, revealing a mass of scarred tissue that wrapped around his forearm like a twisted bracelet. The scar tissue was silvery white against his tanned skin, the damage so severe it was a wonder the limb was still functional. "We all carry marks, Alara. Some are simply more visible than others." I stared at the scars, unable to look away. "What happened?" "A story for another time." He rolled his sleeve back down. "But know this. In the north, scars are not marks of shame. They are proof of survival." A commotion at the far end of the hall drew our attention. A warrior from the northern delegation was on his feet, face flushed with anger as he confronted one of our pack's young males. Though I couldn't hear the words exchanged, the aggressive stance made the nature of the confrontation clear. King Dominic's expression hardened. He didn't raise his voice or stand, but somehow his command carried across the room. "Enough." Both men immediately fell silent, turning toward the high table. The northern warrior bowed deeply. "Apologies, my king. The southern wolf made implications about your choice of company tonight." My cheeks burned with humiliation. So it had already started, the whispers, the questions, the challenges to his judgment for singling out the scarred Omega. Did he? King Dominic's voice was dangerously soft. "And what concern is my choice to him? Or to you, Alaric?" The warrior named Alaric stiffened. "None, my king. I merely sought to defend your honor." "My honor needs no defense, especially from words spoken by fools." The king's gaze shifted to the southern wolf, who seemed to shrink under the weight of it. "If you have concerns about my decisions, address them to me directly. I assure you, it will be an educational experience." The threat beneath the civil words was unmistakable. The southern wolf bowed awkwardly, mumbling apologies before slinking back to his seat. Conversation gradually resumed, though the tension lingered in the air, like the scent of a coming storm. King Dominic turned back to me as if nothing had happened. "You haven't touched your food." "I'm not very hungry," I admitted. "You'll need your strength for the journey tomorrow." My fork clattered against my plate. "Journey?" "To the north. He said it as if it were obvious. The ceremonial selection is binding, Alara. You know this. Of course I knew. Every Omega presented at the choosing knew they might leave their home forever if selected, but the reality of it, of leaving Mira, the only family I had left, of traveling to the harsh northern territory with this man I barely knew, hit me with the force of a physical blow. I can't. My sister. The words tumbled out, panic rising in my throat. Your sister may join us, if that is your wish, he said calmly. I've already arranged it with your Pack Alpha. The casual way he disposed of my life, rearranging the pieces to suit his desires, sparked a flare of anger through my fear. Do I have any say in this at all? His eyes narrowed slightly, but instead of anger, I saw something like respect in his gaze. You may decline, if that is truly your wish. The choosing is a selection, not a sentence. But know that such a rejection would have political consequences. The implication was clear. The peace between our territories, the alliance that protected my pack from enemies that surrounded us on other borders, might be jeopardized if I refused. I was a sacrifice for the greater good, whether I wished to be or not. Why me? I asked again, needing to understand. Out of all the Omegas presented tonight, why choose the one who would bring you the most questions, the most challenges to your judgment? He leaned closer, his voice dropping so that only I could hear his next words. Because when I look at you, I see someone who has faced true pain and survived it. Someone who understands that life isn't fair, that sometimes we must endure what seems unbearable. His eyes, those pale, piercing eyes, held mine. And because when you cry, Alara Bennett, you don't do it for show or manipulation. Your tears are honest, like everything else about you. My breath caught in my throat. Had he really been watching me before tonight? How was that possible? I don't understand, I whispered. You will. He straightened, glancing toward the windows where the storm still raged. The feast is nearly over. You should spend time with your sister tonight. Prepare for the journey. As if summoned by his words, Mira appeared at my side, curtsying nervously to the king. Your Majesty, if I may speak with my sister? King Dominic nodded. Of course. To me, he added, we leave at dawn, regardless of the weather. Be ready. He rose from his seat, and instantly the entire hall stood in respect. As he walked away, warriors falling into formation around him, I felt as if a great weight had lifted, yet paradoxically, I felt its absence like a loss. Mira grabbed my hand beneath the table, squeezing so hard it hurt. What happened? She whispered urgently. 1 minute you're hiding in the back, the next you're sitting beside the Alpha King himself. I shook my head, still trying to process it all myself. I don't know, Mira, but we're going north. Both of us. Tomorrow. Her eyes widened. Both? But I wasn't chosen. He arranged it. He said I could bring you. Mira sat back, stunned. Alara, do you realize what this means? He's considering you as... Don't. I cut her off. Don't say it. I can't think about that possibility right now. My sister fell silent, but her eyes were full of questions I couldn't answer. Outside, lightning flashed, illuminating the great hall in stark white light for a moment, before plunging it back into the warm glow of torches and candles. Tomorrow, I would leave everything I knew behind. Tomorrow I would travel north with a king who saw value in my scars when everyone else saw only damage. Tomorrow, my life would truly begin, or end. I wasn't sure which. Dawn arrived with stubborn mist clinging to the ground and the lingering scent of rain. I stood in the courtyard, a small bag of possessions at my feet, watching as the northern delegation prepared for departure. Warriors moved with practiced efficiency, checking weapons and supplies. Their movements reminded me of wolves in human form, fluid, powerful, always aware of their surroundings. Mira stood beside me, her face pale but determined. Unlike me, she had slept through the night. I had lain awake, torn between terror and a strange, inexplicable anticipation that I couldn't explain even to myself. Have you seen him this morning? Mira whispered, her eyes scanning the busy courtyard. I shook my head. King Dominic had not appeared since leaving the feast last night. Part of me wondered if he had changed his mind, if daylight had made him reconsider his impulsive selection of the scarred Omega. Maybe he forgot about us, I said, only half joking. An alpha king doesn't forget, little wolf. The deep voice behind us made both Mira and me jump, especially not about matters of importance. I turned to find King Dominic standing there, dressed for travel in leather and furs. In the pale morning light, he seemed more rugged, less formal than he had at the feast. The effect was somehow more intimidating rather than less. Your Majesty, Mira curtsied deeply, her perfect manners a stark contrast to my frozen silence. His gaze moved between us. Sisters, yet so different. One hides her strength behind perfect courtesy, the other behind her hair. I felt the familiar urge to touch my scar, to make sure it was covered, but I resisted. Instead, I met his eyes directly. We're ready to travel when you are, Your Majesty. Something like approval flickered across his face. Good. You'll ride with me. Your sister will travel with my cousin, Emmeline. He gestured toward a tall, striking woman with sharp features and calculating eyes who stood near the horses. Emmeline serves as my advisor, and will help both of you adjust to northern ways. The woman in question looked us over with a cool, assessing gaze that made me feel like a piece of merchandise being evaluated for quality. Whatever she saw apparently satisfied her, as she offered a short nod before returning to her preparations. She doesn't seem very welcoming, Mira murmured, too low for anyone but me to hear. King Dominic's lips twitched. Emmeline takes time to warm to strangers, but her loyalty is absolute once earned. You do well to remember that many in the north will approach you with similar caution. A warrior approached, leading a magnificent black stallion. The horse was enormous, its coat gleaming in the morning light, its eyes intelligent and wary. Shadow tolerates few riders besides myself, King Dominic said, running a hand along the horse's powerful neck. But we have a long journey ahead, and he is the strongest mount. I stared at the massive animal with trepidation. I had ridden before, of course, but never a war horse like this one, and never with another person. I can ride alone, I offered, eyeing a gentler-looking mare nearby. The northern path is treacherous, especially after rain, he replied. I won't risk your safety to spare your comfort. Before I could protest further, he lifted my bag and secured it to his saddle, then turned to me with expectation clear in his stance. Around us, the rest of the party was mounting up, Mira already being helped onto a horse beside Emmeline. With resignation, I allowed King Dominic to lift me onto Shadow's back as if I weighed nothing. The height was dizzying, the saddle clearly designed for someone much larger than me. A moment later, he swung up behind me with effortless grace, his body a wall of heat at my back. Relax, he murmured, his breath warm against my ear as he reached around me to take the reins. Shadow responds to tension. Trust him, as you must learn to trust me. Easy for him to say. Every muscle in my body had gone rigid the moment he settled behind me. His chest pressed against my back, his arms creating a cage around me as he held the reins. The intimacy of the position made my heart race, and my skin flush with heat, despite the morning chill. The party moved out in tight formation, warriors taking positions at the front and rear, with the king and his closest advisors in the center of the procession. As we passed through the gates of my home for the last time, I caught a glimpse of Elder Thalia watching from a window, her expression unreadable. We rode in silence for the first hour, the steady rhythm of hooves against earth, and the occasional call of a bird the only sounds. The forest grew denser as we traveled north, ancient trees towering overhead, their branches creating a canopy that filtered the strengthening sunlight into dappled patterns on the ground. Your home, King Dominic said eventually, breaking the silence. You'll miss it. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. Yes, it's all I've ever known. And yet you left it without fighting, without tears. I twisted slightly to look at him over my shoulder. Would tears have changed anything? The corner of his mouth lifted. No. But many would have shed them anyway, hoping to manipulate through displays of emotion. I save my tears for when they matter, I said, turning forward again. His chest rumbled against my back in what might have been a suppressed laugh. "What matters enough for your tears, Ilara Bennett?" The question caught me off guard. What did make me cry? Not physical pain. I had learned to endure that. Not fear. I had lived with that constant companion for too long. "Loss," I said finally. "Powerlessness, feeling invisible." "You felt all of those last night," he observed, "yet you didn't cry." I wasn't invisible last night. Quite the opposite. The bitter truth escaped before I could stop it. Everyone saw me. The scarred Omega who somehow caught the king's attention. They stared. They whispered. They wondered what trick I'd used, what weakness of yours I'd exploited. His arms tightened around me, not painfully, but enough to make me acutely aware of the strength he held in check. "And what weakness do you think that might be, little wolf?" The endearment, if that's what it was, sent an unexpected shiver through me. Pity, perhaps, or a desire to appear merciful and kind to your allies. "You think very little of me if you believe I would choose a mate based on political appearances." Mate. The word hung in the air between us, unacknowledged yet unavoidable. We both knew that was the purpose of the choosing ceremony, to select potential mates from allied packs. But hearing him say it so directly made it suddenly terrifyingly real. "I don't know you well enough to think anything of you, Your Majesty," I said carefully. "Dominic," he corrected. "When we're alone, at least, use my name." I swallowed hard. Using his name felt like crossing a boundary, accepting an intimacy I wasn't sure I was ready for. "Dominic," I said softly, testing the shape of it on my tongue. He made a sound of approval, the vibration of it traveling from his chest to my back. "Better. Now tell me about your sister. You protect her fiercely." The change of subject relieved some of the tension coiled within me. "Mira is all the family I have left. She was only 8 when our parents died. I practically raised her after that. She seems well-adjusted, happy." "She is." "Mira has always been able to see the good in things, even in the darkest times." I smiled, thinking of my sister's resilient spirit. She doesn't remember that night as clearly as I do. Sometimes I think that's a blessing, and sometimes a burden, for you to carry the memories alone, he observed with surprising insight. The path narrowed, forcing the procession into a single file. Dominic guided Shadow with subtle shifts of his weight, the massive horse responding to commands I couldn't even detect. We rode in silence again until the trail widened once more. "The Northern Territory," I ventured, wanting to shift the focus away from myself. "Is it truly as harsh as they say?" "Harsher in many ways. The winters are long, the terrain unforgiving." There was pride in his voice rather than complaint. "But there is beauty there that exists nowhere else. Forests untouched by human hands, mountains that pierce the clouds, aurora lights that dance across the night sky in colors you can't imagine." The way he described his home surprised me. I had expected a ruler focused on strength and power to speak of fortresses and training grounds, not natural wonders. "It sounds beautiful," I admitted. "It is. Beautiful and dangerous, like all things worth knowing." There was a weight to his words that suggested he wasn't just speaking of his territory. We stopped at midday to rest the horses and eat. Dominic helped me down from Shadow, his hands lingering at my waist a moment longer than necessary. My legs trembled from the unaccustomed hours of riding, and I stumbled slightly when my feet touched the ground. "You'll grow accustomed to it," he said, steadying me with a hand on my arm. "We have 3 more days of travel ahead." 3 days. 3 more days of riding pressed against him, surrounded by his scent and warmth. 3 days before facing whatever awaited me in the Northern Territory. The thought made my stomach clench with anxiety. I found Mira sitting on a fallen log, massaging her legs with a grimace. "How are you faring?" I asked, joining her. "I think my legs have permanently molded to the shape of a horse," she replied with a rueful smile. "But Emmeline has been informative." "Informative how?" Mira glanced around to make sure no one was within earshot. "She told me about the North, about their customs, their beliefs, about the king." She lowered her voice further. "Ilara, do you know what it means? That he chose you himself rather than allowing his council to select?" I shook my head, though dread pooled in my stomach. In Northern tradition, only a true mate is chosen directly by the Alpha King. It hasn't happened in 3 generations. Mira's eyes were wide. Emmeline says there are prophecies about it. About a scarred Omega who would bring change to the North. Prophecies? I scoffed, though my heart raced. Mira, you know how I feel about such things. After what happened to our parents, I know you don't believe in fate or destiny, she said gently. But maybe this is a coincidence, I interrupted firmly, or a political strategy we don't yet understand. Mira looked unconvinced, but let the matter drop as Emmeline approached, carrying wooden bowls of stew for each of us. Eat, the tall woman commanded. The path grows more difficult from here, and we won't stop again until nightfall. I accepted the bowl with murmured thanks, but my appetite had fled. Across the small clearing, Dominic stood with his warriors, discussing something in low, urgent tones. As if feeling my gaze, he looked up, his pale eyes locking with mine across the distance. Something unspoken passed between us, a recognition, an acknowledgement. Before he returned to his conversation, he watches you, Emmeline said, settling beside us with her own food. Even when engaged elsewhere, he is aware of your every movement. Why? The question escaped before I could stop it. Emmeline studied me, her sharp features unreadable. That is for him to explain when the time comes. But know this, Southern Wolf, our king does nothing without purpose. If he has chosen you, there is reason beyond what any of us may guess. Her cryptic answer did nothing to ease my growing unease. Before I could press further, a shout from one of the scouts drew everyone's attention. The warrior burst into the clearing, face grim. Trackers, my king. Following our trail, less than an hour behind. Dominic's expression darkened. How many? At least a dozen. Moving fast, traveling light. Hunters, then. He issued rapid commands, warriors moving instantly to obey. Break camp. We ride north through the ravine. If they seek a confrontation, let it be on terrain of our choosing. The peaceful meal dissolved into urgent activity. Mira looked to me with frightened eyes. Hunters? What does that mean? I had no answer for her, but Emmeline did. Bounty hunters. There are those who would pay well for northern blood, especially royal blood, or for an Omega chosen at the ceremony, added a warrior nearby, giving me a pointed look. A chill ran down my spine. I hadn't considered that I might be a target now, simply because of Dominic's attention. As if summoned by my thoughts, he appeared at my side. Stay close to me, he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. If we're separated, make for the northern ridge. Emmeline will ensure your sister's safety. I nodded, fear making my throat tight. He helped me onto shadow once more, mounting behind me with fluid grace. This time, I didn't stiffen at the contact, fear of unknown hunters overriding any discomfort at his proximity. We set off at a faster pace, the horses sensing the tension and responding with eager speed. The forest blurred around us, Shadow's powerful strides eating up the ground beneath us. Dominic's body was a solid presence at my back, his arms a secure cage around me as he guided the stallion through increasingly difficult terrain. Who are they? I asked, raising my voice slightly to be heard over the thunder of hooves. Mercenaries, most likely, he replied. Hired by those who oppose the alliance between North and South. Because of me? The thought that people might die because of his inexplicable choice weighed heavily. His arms tightened around me, not because of you, because of politics and power, the eternal games of those who cannot accept peace. We reached the ravine he had mentioned, a narrow passage between towering rock walls, barely wide enough for 2 horses to ride abreast. The procession slowed, forced into a more vulnerable formation by the terrain. If they catch us here, I began. They won't. The certainty in his voice was almost reassuring. Almost. As we entered the shadowed passage, I found myself holding my breath, straining to hear any sound of pursuit over the clatter of our own horses. The ravine seemed to go on forever, the walls rising higher on either side, blocking the afternoon sun and plunging us into premature twilight. The sound came without warning, a high whistling noise followed by a heavy thud as an arrow embedded itself in the rock wall just inches from my head. Ambush! The cry went up from the rear guard. Chaos erupted as more arrows rained down from above. Dominic's reaction was instantaneous. He pulled Shadow to a halt, twisted in the saddle, and drew a sword I hadn't even realized he carried. In the same fluid motion, he swung me around so that I was facing him, protected by his body as arrows continued to fall around us. "Hold tight," he commanded, and I obeyed without thinking, my arms locking around his waist as he spurred Shadow forward with a shout that echoed off the ravine walls. The battle unfolded in fragments of sound and motion, the clash of metal, shouts of pain and fury, the thunder of hooves on stone. I caught glimpses over Dominic's shoulder as he fought one-handed, the other arm keeping me secure against him. Warriors fell and rose, blood darkened the ground, and through it all, Shadow carried us forward, responding to commands I couldn't hear or feel. "Ilara." Dominic's voice cut through my fear, forcing me to focus on his face. "When I say, you run. Straight ahead, out of the ravine. Don't look back, don't stop. I can't leave you. You can. You will." His eyes burned with an intensity that brooked no argument. "Promise me." I nodded, unable to refuse the command in his voice. "I promise." He pressed something cold and metal into my hand, a small dagger with an ornate handle. "If anyone but me or my warriors approaches you, use this. Aim for the throat or eyes." The practical advice shocked me out of my paralysis. This wasn't a fairy tale rescue. He expected me to fight if necessary. We broke free of the main battle, Shadow carrying us toward the end of the ravine where daylight beckoned. Hope surged within me. We would make it. We would escape. Then I saw them. 3 figures blocking the exit, bows raised and aimed directly at us. "Now, Ilara," Dominic shouted, pulling Shadow to a halt and practically throwing me from the saddle. "Run!" I hit the ground running, the dagger clutched in my hand, my father's wooden wolf bouncing against my leg with each stride. Behind me, I heard Dominic's roar of challenge as he charged the ambushers. I didn't look back. I had promised. The daylight grew brighter as I neared the ravine's end, my lungs burning, legs pumping. Freedom was just steps away. I would reach the ridge, find safety, wait for Dominic and the others to join me. A figure stepped out from behind a boulder, blocking my path, tall, scarred, with eyes that held no humanity. A hunter. Without thinking, I raised the dagger Dominic had given me, my father's words echoing in my mind. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward despite it. Time slowed as the hunter advanced toward me, a cruel smile spreading across his face. My grip tightened on the dagger, the metal cold against my palm. I had never fought before, not like this. Not for my life, but something primal awakened inside me. A will to survive that overrode fear. "The scarred Omega," he said, his voice rough with anticipation, worth twice the bounty alive, but still valuable dead. He lunged forward with unexpected speed. I dodged instinctively, the movement more animal than human, my body remembering what my mind had never learned. The dagger slashed out, catching him across the forearm. He hissed in pain, but didn't slow. "Fight all you want, little wolf. Makes it more entertaining." His next attack drove me backward, my feet scrabbling for purchase on the rocky ground. I knew I couldn't match him for strength or skill. My only advantage was my size, smaller, quicker. I feinted right, then darted left, trying to slip past him toward the open ground beyond the ravine. His hand caught my hair, yanking me backward with brutal force. Pain exploded across my scalp as he pulled me against his chest, his arm like an iron band around my throat. "Not so fast," he growled against my ear. "The Northern King will pay handsomely to get you back." The dagger was still in my hand, partly concealed by my sleeve. With the last of my fading strength, I drove it backward and up, aiming as Dominic had instructed, for the throat. The hunter's scream was wet and gurgling. His grip loosened as he staggered back, hands rising to the wound in his neck. Horror and disbelief mingled in his eyes as he fell to his knees, then collapsed forward onto the stone. I stood frozen, the bloodied dagger trembling in my hand, unable to process what I had just done. I had taken a life. The reality of it washed over me in waves of nausea and shock. A shout from within the ravine snapped me back to the present. More hunters could be coming. I couldn't stay here, couldn't freeze. Forcing my legs to move, I stumbled toward the ridge Dominic had indicated, leaving the fallen hunter behind. The hillside was steep, covered in loose scree that slid beneath my feet, making the climb treacherous. Each step required concentration, each handhold carefully chosen. I kept moving upward, driven by the sounds of battle that still echoed from the ravine below. When I reached the ridgetop, I collapsed behind an outcropping of rock, my breath coming in ragged gasps, my hands still shaking. From this vantage point, I could see the end of the ravine where Dominic had confronted the 3 ambushers. The ground was empty now, no sign of either friend or foe. Time passed in a haze of fear and exhaustion. The sun began its descent toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the landscape. Still, I waited, clinging to the hope that Dominic and the others had survived, that they would come for me. As twilight deepened, doubt began to gnaw at the edges of that hope. What if they had been defeated? What if Dominic had fallen? What if Mira... No, I couldn't think that way. I refused to accept that I might be alone again, that I might have lost everything once more. A sound from below, the crunch of boots on stone, sent me pressing deeper into the shadows. I raised the dagger, still crusted with dried blood, ready to defend myself again if necessary. Ilara. Dominic's voice, though quiet, carried clearly to my hiding place. You can come out now. It's safe. Relief flooded through me with such force that my legs nearly gave way as I stood. I emerged from behind the rocks to see Dominic climbing the last few yards to the ridge, his clothing torn and bloodied, but his movements still powerful and sure. Before I could think better of it, I ran to him. He caught me against his chest with a grunt of surprise, his arms enfolding me in warmth and strength that felt, in that moment, like salvation itself. You're alive, I whispered against his shoulder, breathing in his scent of leather, forest, and something uniquely him. I feared. It would take more than a few hired blades to separate me from what's mine, he said, his voice a low rumble that I felt more than heard. What's mine? The possessive declaration should have offended me, should have raised my hackles. Instead, it sent a shiver of something dangerously close to pleasure down my spine. I pulled back slightly, reality reasserting itself. Mira? The others? Safe. Emmeline got your sister away as soon as the attack began. They're waiting at the camp we've established half a league north. His eyes, bright even in the growing darkness, searched my face. You're hurt. I touched my cheek, feeling the sting of a cut I hadn't even noticed in the heat of escape. It's nothing. Just a scratch. His thumb brushed just beneath the cut, feather-light. You killed one of them. It wasn't a question. He must have found the body on his way to find me. Shame and a strange, fierce pride warred within me. I did what I had to do. Yes, he agreed, studying me with new respect. You did. Many would have frozen, would have begged or surrendered. I promised I would run. I promised I would survive. I met his gaze steadily. I keep my promises. Something shifted in his expression. A softening around the eyes, a slight curve of the lips, not quite a smile, but something warmer than his usual stern countenance. Come, he said, taking my hand. Night falls quickly in these mountains, and we have injured to tend. The descent was easier with him guiding me, his hand steady and sure around mine. We reached the bottom of the ridge as the last light faded from the sky, stars beginning to emerge in the deepening blue above. What happened? I asked as we walked north along the base of the ridge. After you sent me away, the ambush was poorly executed, he said, his tone matter of fact. They had numbers, but little skill. We lost 2 warriors and several more are wounded, but none fatally. The casual mention of death reminded me that this man lived with violence as a constant companion. To him, the loss of 2 warriors was an acceptable outcome for an ambush survived. I wondered what other hardships he accepted as the normal cost of his position, his life. Who sent them? I asked. You said they were mercenaries. Who hired them? Dominic's expression darkened. That remains to be discovered. But they will be found. and they will answer for today's attack." The promise of retribution in his voice sent a chill through me. I had no doubt he would keep that promise, and that the punishment would be severe. We reached the camp as true night fell. Fires had been lit, their warm glow illuminating a scene of organized efficiency despite the day's violence. Wounded were being tended, horses cared for, guards posted at strategic points around the perimeter. Mira rushed toward me the moment we entered the camp, flinging herself into my arms with a sob of relief. "Alara, thank the goddess you're safe. I was so worried when they separated us." I held her tightly, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair, reassuring myself that she truly was unharmed. "I'm fine. We're both fine now." Over her shoulder, I saw Emmeline watching us, her expression unreadable. When our eyes met, she offered a slight nod, acknowledgement, perhaps, or approval. "The king found you himself," Mira whispered, pulling back to examine me. "He wouldn't let anyone else go, even when they told him there might be more hunters in the hills." The revelation that Dominic had risked himself personally to find me, rather than sending warriors, made something warm unfurl in my chest. I glanced around, but he had already moved away, speaking with his commanders, issuing quiet orders. Emmeline approached, carrying a cloth and a small pot of something that smelled medicinal. "For your face," she said, indicating my cut. "It should be cleaned before it festers." I accepted her ministrations gratefully, wincing only slightly as the herbal mixture stung the open wound. "Thank you for taking care of my sister, and for this. You handled yourself well today," she said, her tone neutral but her eyes appraising. "Many Omegas would have collapsed into hysteria at the first sign of danger. I'm not most Omegas, so it seems." She finished treating my cut and stepped back. "The king has ordered that you and your sister share my tent tonight. Extra guards will be posted. Rest while you can. We leave before first light." After she walked away, Mira leaned close. "She's terrifying, but I think she likes you, or at least respects you." "Let's hope so," I murmured. "We'll need allies in the north." The realization that I was already thinking in terms of survival strategies for our new home struck me suddenly. When had I accepted that this was happening? That I was truly going to the Northern Territory with Dominic? Perhaps when he'd found me on the ridge, or perhaps when I'd driven a dagger into a man's throat to survive for this future that awaited me. Mira and I settled into Emmeline's tent, which was sparse but comfortable, with thick furs laid over the ground for sleeping. Exhaustion dragged at my limbs, but sleep remained elusive. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the hunter's face as my blade found his throat, felt the hot splash of his blood on my hand. I slipped out of the tent, careful not to wake Mira, who had fallen into exhausted slumber almost immediately. The night air was cold and clear, the stars brilliant overhead. Guards nodded to me, but didn't stop me as I made my way to the edge of camp, seeking solitude to clear my head. "You should be resting." Dominic's voice came from the shadows, startling me. "I could say the same to you," I replied, spotting him seated on a fallen log, a whetstone in his hand as he sharpened a blade. "Kings sleep less than others. It's a requirement of the position." There was a dry humor in his tone that I hadn't heard before. He gestured to the space beside him. "Join me, if sleep eludes you." I hesitated, then sat, careful to maintain a proper distance between us. The rhythmic scrape of stone against metal filled the silence for several minutes. "The first kill is always the hardest," he said eventually, his eyes still on his work. "It changes you." I stared at my hands, clean now, but still feeling the phantom stickiness of blood. "Does it get easier?" "Yes. And that's the true horror of it." He set the whetstone aside, testing the blade's edge with his thumb. "When taking a life becomes easy, something of your own humanity is lost." "Is that what happened to you?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. Too personal, too presumptuous. Instead of anger, his response held only weary truth. Many times over, the admission hung in the air between us, heavy with implications. This was a man who had fought and killed repeatedly, who carried the weight of many deaths on his conscience. Yet he worried about my humanity after a single kill. "I'm not sorry I did it," I said finally. "I would do it again, to survive. To protect Mira, or..." I stopped, unsure how to continue. Or me, he suggested, a hint of that dry humor returning. You hardly need my protection. Everyone needs protection sometimes, Alara. Even kings. He sheathed his blade and turned to face me fully. Especially kings. The vulnerability in that statement, however slight, shifted something between us. This wasn't just the Alpha King speaking to an Omega he had claimed. This was a man revealing a small truth to a woman he was beginning to trust. What happens when we reach the north? I asked, needing to know what awaited us, what he expected of me. You and your sister will be given time to settle in, to learn our ways. His gaze was steady on mine. And then, when you're ready, we will discuss what comes next. And if I'm never ready? I challenged, needing to test the boundaries of this arrangement. He studied me for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. You will be. Not because I command it, but because you are stronger than you know. The North will show you that strength if you let it. The confidence in his voice was unsettling. How could he be so certain of me when I was still so uncertain of myself? Before I could respond, a rustling from the trees beyond the camp perimeter caught both our attentions. Dominic was on his feet instantly, sword drawn, positioning himself between me and the potential threat. A scout emerged from the darkness, dropping to one knee before Dominic. My king, riders approach from the east. They fly northern colors, but they're not from our party. Dominic's expression tightened, a silent calculation passing behind his eyes. How many? 12. Perhaps more, the scout replied. They're moving fast. Reinforcements? I asked, rising to stand beside Dominic. He shook his head, sheathing his sword. I sent no call for additional warriors. To the scout, he added, wake the commanders. Double the guards. No aggression unless I order it, but be prepared. The scout disappeared into the night, moving with the silent efficiency I was beginning to recognize as characteristic of northern wolves. Dominic turned to me, his face now a careful mask of control. Return to your tent, he said, his voice brooking no argument. Stay with your sister. If this turns dangerous, Emmeline knows where to take you. Who are they? I pressed, unwilling to be dismissed so easily. If they're northern, shouldn't they be allies? A shadow crossed his features. Not all who claim northern blood share northern loyalties. The cryptic answer only heightened my concern. But I recognized the command of an alpha when I heard one. With a nod, I turned to leave, but his hand caught my wrist, stopping me. Alara. His voice had softened, the stern king replaced momentarily by the man. I won't let harm come to you or your sister. That is my vow to you. The intensity in his eyes made my breath catch. I believe you, I said simply, and realized with surprise that I did. He released my wrist, his fingers trailing briefly against my palm in a touch so light it might have been accidental. Yet the warmth lingered as I made my way back through the camp, now stirring with quiet activity as warriors prepared for potential conflict. Mira was awake when I entered the tent, her eyes wide with worry. What's happening? Riders approaching. Northern, but not Dominic's men. I kept my voice calm, not wanting to frighten her further. Probably nothing to worry about. You're a terrible liar, Alara, she said, but a small smile softened the accusation. Always have been. I sat beside her on the furs, taking her hand in mine. Whatever happens, we stay together. That's what matters. She nodded, squeezing my hand. Outside, the sound of approaching hoofbeats grew louder, then stopped. Voices carried on the night air, too distant to make out words, but the tension in them was unmistakable. Emmeline entered the tent, her face impassive but her body coiled with alertness. Stay here, she instructed. Armed guards are posted outside. You'll be safe. Who are they? Mira asked, voicing the question I'd failed to get answered. Emmeline's lips thinned. The king's half-brother, Prince Nathaniel, and his followers. His presence here is unexpected. The careful neutrality of her tone told me more than her words. This half-brother wasn't a welcome ally. Is the king in danger? I found myself asking. Something flickered in Emmeline's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, at my concern. Dominic can handle Nathaniel, she said, which wasn't exactly an answer. Stay here, she repeated, then left. Minutes passed like hours as Mira and I waited, straining to hear any clue about what was happening outside. Finally, unable to bear the suspense any longer, I moved to the tent flap and peered out. The camp was arranged around a central fire, where Dominic now stood facing a man who shared enough of his features to make their relationship unmistakable. Both tall, both commanding, but where Dominic's power was contained, controlled, this man, Nathaniel, seemed to leak energy from every pore, his gestures expansive, his voice carrying easily across the camp. "Convenient that you happened to be in these mountains, brother, when such an attack occurred," Nathaniel was saying, his tone just shy of insolent. "Coincidence often appears convenient to those seeking conspiracy." Dominic replied, his voice level but cold. "Why are you here, Nathaniel? You were not summoned." Nathaniel spread his hands in a gesture of innocence that rang false even from a distance. "Can a brother not be concerned when he hears rumors of an ambush? I came to offer aid, of course. Your concern is noted. Your aid is unnecessary." The dismissal was clear, but Nathaniel seemed unperturbed. His gaze swept the camp, lingering on the wounded warriors, the alert guards, and then, finding the tent where I watched, on me. I should have stepped back, hidden myself from view, but something in his stare held me frozen. A smile spread across his face, calculating and cold despite its outward charm. "Ah," he said, loud enough for all to hear, "so the rumors are true. You've chosen a mate at last, brother, and a Southern Omega no less. How progressive of you." Dominic's expression didn't change, but the temperature of the air around him seemed to drop. "My choices are not your concern, Nathaniel. But they are the concern of the Northern Council, are they not? Especially when they involve bringing an outsider into the royal line." Nathaniel stepped closer to Dominic, lowering his voice, though I could still hear his words. "They say she's disfigured, scarred. Is that true, brother? Have you chosen a broken mate for our bloodline?" I flinched as if struck, the familiar shame burning through me. Before I realized what I was doing, I had stepped fully outside the tent, standing straight and proud, despite the humiliation coursing through me. "Yes," I said clearly, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent camp. "I am scarred. I wear the mark of survival, of a battle that killed my parents, but failed to kill me." All eyes turned to me, Nathaniel's surprised, Dominic's unreadable, Emmeline's with a flash of what might have been approval. Nathaniel recovered quickly, a smile that didn't reach his eyes spreading across his face as he approached me. "The little Omega has spirit, I'll grant her that. But spirit alone doesn't make a queen worthy of the North. She's not for you to judge," Dominic said, the words carrying a warning that made several warriors shift nervously. Nathaniel ignored him, circling me slowly, assessing. I forced myself to stand still under his scrutiny, to meet his gaze without flinching when he finally stopped before me. "Tell me, little wolf," he said softly, "what makes you think you're worthy of becoming our queen? What do you offer besides a pretty face? Well, half a pretty face, and the traditional Omega subservience?" The insult was deliberate, designed to provoke either tears or anger. I gave him neither, drawing on a well of calm I hadn't known I possessed. "I offer nothing but myself," I said simply. "That seems to be enough for your brother, though I can't speak to his reasons." "His reasons?" Nathaniel laughed, the sound sharp and without humor. "My brother doesn't make decisions based on reason where Omegas are concerned. Ask his first love about that." "Oh wait, you can't. She's dead." The camp went utterly still, the words hanging in the air like poison. Dominic's face had gone blank, a mask so perfect it could only conceal rage beneath. I didn't think. I moved forward, placing myself between the brothers, my back to Dominic as I faced Nathaniel. "You speak of honor and worthiness, yet you use someone's pain as a weapon," I said, my voice quiet but carrying. "What does that say about your character, Prince Nathaniel?" For a moment, genuine surprise flickered across his face, followed quickly by anger. "You dare lecture me, Omega? You who knows nothing of our ways, our history?" "I know cruelty when I hear it," I replied steadily. "And I know that true strength doesn't need to diminish others to prove itself." A hand settled on my shoulder, Dominic's, warm and steadying. "Enough, Nathaniel," he said, his voice deceptively soft. "You've delivered your message. Now leave. before I forget we share blood." Nathaniel's eyes narrowed, darting between me and Dominic. Whatever he saw made him step back, though his smile remained sharp as a blade. "As you wish, brother. But the council will have questions about the ambush, about her." His gaze flicked to me dismissively. "Don't think this matter is settled. It never is with you," Dominic replied coolly. "Safe travels, brother." The dismissal was unmistakable. Nathaniel bowed with exaggerated formality, then turned and strode back to his men. Within minutes, they had mounted and departed, the sound of hoofbeats fading into the night. Only when they were gone did Dominic's hand drop from my shoulder. I turned to face him, expecting anger at my interference. Instead, his expression held something more complex, a mixture of respect, concern, and something deeper I couldn't name. "You shouldn't have confronted him," he said, but there was no heat in the rebuke. "Nathaniel is dangerous, especially to those He paused, seeming to reconsider his words. "To those under my protection. He was cruel to you," I said simply. "About someone you lost." A shadow passed over his face, an old wound, but one that never fully heals. He studied me for a long moment. "Why did you defend me? You owe me no loyalty yet." The "yet" hung between us, full of implication. I considered my answer carefully, wanting to give him truth rather than what he might wish to hear. "Because I know what it is to have pain used against you," I said finally. "No one deserves that, not even an Alpha King." Something in his expression softened, the stern lines of his face gentling. "You continue to surprise me, Alara Bennett." Before I could respond, Emmeline approached, breaking the moment between us. "We should move out, my king. Nathaniel's presence here was no coincidence. It would be wise to reach Northern Territory before he can arrange another welcome." Dominic nodded, instantly returning to his role as commander. Break camp. We ride within the hour. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. The camp was dismantled with practiced efficiency, wounded warriors secured on horses, supplies repacked. Before dawn had even hinted at the eastern horizon, we were mounted and moving again, pushing north at a pace that spoke of urgency without panic. I rode with Dominic again, but this time, the silence between us felt different, charged with unspoken questions, with possibilities I was only beginning to understand. The wooden wolf my father had carved bounced against my leg with each stride of the horse, a reminder of home, of who I had been. But that girl, the one who had hidden her face, who had believed herself unworthy because of a scar, felt increasingly distant, like a story I had been told rather than a life I had lived. As the first light of dawn crested the mountains ahead, Dominic spoke, his voice a low rumble against my back. "There, the northern border." I looked where he indicated, seeing a line of ancient stones set across our path, marked with symbols I didn't recognize. Beyond them, the landscape changed subtly, the trees taller, the underbrush thicker, the very air somehow different. "Once we cross," he said, "you'll be under northern law, northern protection." He paused, then added more softly, "Under my protection, in truth rather than just in word. And Mira, your sister will be welcomed as your family, honored as your blood." I nodded, accepting this as we approached the stone markers. As Shadow stepped across the border, I felt a strange shiver pass through me, as if I had crossed more than just a territorial boundary. "Welcome to the north, Alara," Dominic said, and I could hear the pride in his voice, the love he bore for his homeland evident in those simple words. 3 days later, we crested a final ridge to see a valley spread below us, and at its center, a fortress city of stone and wood that seemed to grow from the very mountain itself. Smoke rose from hundreds of chimneys, and even from this distance, I could see the bustle of activity, a living, thriving community unlike anything in the Southern Territories. "Ravencroft," Dominic said, a note of satisfaction in his voice. "Our home. Our home." The words settled around me like a mantle, heavy with responsibility, yet somehow right. As we descended toward the city, people emerged to line the path, watching our approach with curious eyes. I felt their stares, knew they were taking in my scar, my southern clothing, my blonde hair so different from their darker coloring. But for the first time in my life, I didn't hide my face. I sat straight, my head held high, Dominic solid and sure behind me. Whatever awaited me in this strange new land, whatever challenges, whatever joys, I would face them with the same courage that had brought me here. The wooden wolf in my pocket seemed warmer somehow, as if my father's spirit approved. Courage isn't the absence of fear, little one. It's moving forward despite it. And forward I would go, into this new life, this new world, scarred but unbroken, and no longer hiding my tears or my strength from those who might see their worth.